The task ahead of Norman Woodall was very difficult, following a legend. He was just in his early 30s and full of new ideas that were quite different from Mr. Willis's style from the 40s and 50s. He was going to have to prove himself to the students, school, and community. When Norman started at Hickson in the fall of 1959, the band had about 30 members, no instruments, no music library to speak of, and was so untrained that they had never marched before. In 10 years, he built the band into a group that earned regular superior ratings in grade 6. He was also an expert on the precision drill marching style used at that time. Although only in his early 30s, he was already considered one of the most outstanding band directors in the state. When the All-State Band was held in Chattanooga in spring 1968, Mr. Woodall was the All-State chairperson. After his 10 years in Chattanooga, Mr. Woodall was ready to tackle a new challenge. He left, started a master's degree at Peabody in Nashville, but soon ran out of money. He was hired by Mr. Cannell and came to Knoxville in the fall of 1970. He would later finish his master's at UT. So, that first year at Central saw a new director, new uniforms, and a new school building. The band scheduling during the school day also changed. After decades of a first-period band, second-period band, and in the latter years even a small third-period group, all band students were placed into one period. The band was quite large, as shown in this snapshot from a football game. This large class made rehearsing easier during marching season, but was a real problem at times during concert season. To honor another long-standing Central tradition, that first year Mr. Woodall wore a director's uniform at the ball games. Other local band directors were also curious about how he would fare. Norman told me that during the winter of 1972, a group of Knox County band directors once showed up unannounced during band class. He started the rehearsal by sight reading a difficult grade 6 number, American Overture for Band. This work opens with a horn rip, followed by lots of double-tonguing in the brass. The band read the piece so well that most of the visiting directors simply did not believe that Norman had not already rehearsed the piece. Well, the band was that good, receiving straight superior ratings at Concert Festival on Il Guarny in grade 6. At Dogwood Arts that year, one judge described Il Guarny as one of the deadliest of the old war horses for band, but told Mr. Woodall that, quote, "You are one group who conquered Il Guarny, and I'll probably never hear it better." This additional picture from that first year at the new building shows Charlie Sanders rehearsing with Mr. Woodall at the side. Mr. Woodall also took the band on an unusual trip that spring of 1972. They went to Mexico, one of the first bands in this area to visit another country. Judges' comments from the performance included an excellent band with splendid technique from veteran band composer Paul Yoder, and beautiful interpretation, brilliant, among the translated comments from the Mexican judge. One of the trumpet players that year was Greg Roach. Greg later became a band director, spent much of his career at Powell High School, and is now a high school assistant principal in Knox County. The 1972-1973 band did the William Tell Overture for Festival, earning a superior. Mr. Woodall continued working on this challenging piece with the band, and they performed it again at the Dogwood Arts Festival the following month to rave reviews. Two judges wrote that it was as good a performance of the piece that they had ever heard by a high school band, with the woodwind section and the general musicality of Mr. Woodall's interpretation coming in for special note. One judge said, "This is a fantastic group. This was music." And in a personal note to Mr. Woodall, recommended that he apply to have the band perform at the Midwest Band Conference, the most prestigious in the country. Dwight Christian had been a band director for several years, but had taken time off to get his master's degree. When he returned to teaching, he spent part of each day as the director at Sturkey Elementary. When the new high school opened, Gresham became a grade 7 through 9 junior high school, and Dwight was its first director.
My name's Dwight Christian. I was the first band director at Gresham Junior High. That was grades 7, 8, and 9. And I taught at Gresham for 3 years. Yes, I came the year after Odell Willis retired. Well, Norman was band director at Hickson High School, and while I was band director at South High School, we met each other through competitions and what have you, and we had similar interests. Norman was a good jazz bass player, and so through jazz we became acquainted, and so we had a mutual respect for each other. It was tough on Norman. He realized that he was following a legend, and I don't think he ever did forget that. You know, he had a lot of respect for Odell. Well, Odell was, of course, I looked up to him. Everyone did at that time, because he was the epitome of the band director at that time. And Odell was quite a character.
I asked Dwight about those early days of Gresham Junior High School.
The first year, it was in the old Central High School band room.
Did they still call it the White Castle?
I believe they did. I believe they did. Had a lot of good students. I mean, the elementary schools, Jack King was one of the instructors, and Peggy Dowdy, and both of them did tremendous work. And so I was hand-fed great students, and some of them are still in the community today. Dr. Joe Black, Mark Biaggi, I think he's a dentist, and some other people that, you know, music was a big part of their lives, but they stayed in the Knoxville community.
Did you have Jim Lotes?
Jimmy Lotes, yes, how? Jimmy, I taught him to play yakety sax when he was in about the 7th grade. Yeah. And it turned out to be just a tremendous band. We played grade 4 music, I mean, right off. Yeah. And did really well with it.
Yeah.
Dwight was not assigned to assist at Central, but he did stay in touch with how things were going at the high school.
Well, Norman had a command of the literature. He was very knowledgeable of band literature and the backgrounds of the composers, and Norman was a well-read person. He was an intelligent person. He was a great band director. The students were the most important thing to Norman. He lived Central High School band. But Norman did love he loved to converse with people.
Yeah,
and like I say, he was knowledgeable about a lot of things. And if you would listen to him, you would learn something. The time that I was here at Gresham Junior High School, some of the greatest young musicians in the world, I mean, could perform at a very high level. And that was the reason we could play grade 4 music at the junior high level. And at that time, that had not been done much around here in this area. So Gresham Junior High School was sort of a pace setter for excellence at that time.
Jimmy Lotes, who now goes by Jim, started on saxophone and added bassoon as a 9th grader in Odell Willis's final year at Central. Then at the new building under Norman Woodall, he made first chair bassoon in the All-State Band for 3 years. He was the drum major for fall '73 and was one of only 2 Tennesseans chosen for the McDonald's All-American Band that year. Jim was also an outstanding basketball player who was recruited for Indiana University by their controversial coach, Bobby Knight. When told by Coach Knight that at Indiana he wouldn't have time to play both basketball and bassoon, he gave up basketball. He is now the bassoon instructor at Tennessee Tech. Another outstanding young musician Dwight Christian mentioned from those early years of Gresham Junior High was Joe Black. Do you remember Joe Black Jr. from the Odell Willis years, Well, this was his son, Joe Black III. Joe III had started at a young age, with his father showing him a little about playing drums, then started in the 4th grade band program at Fountain City Elementary.
My name is Joe Black. I was a member of Central High School Band from 1973 to 1976. I was at Fountain City Elementary School. Jack King was my director there. Then moved on to Gresham when Gresham first opened, and Dwight Christian was my band director there, from the 7th, 8th, 9th years. I took private lessons some in junior high school, and then more seriously in high school. High school, I guess, percussion instructor was Chet Hedgecoth, and I really enjoyed those years. And I didn't realize it at the time, but that Mr. Hedgecoth and Mr. Woodall were together at Tennessee Tech. I think that some of my best memories have to do with getting 100 or so of us students together and to make music, and some very beautiful music. There'd be some band classes that we'd play the whole time, and some band classes that we would not play one note. Okay, and it wasn't silence, it was Mr. Woodall talking to us. We knew that he was there to teach us not only about music, but intertwining life's lessons too.
What kind of things did he talk about?
Responsibility, discipline, not just discipline of do as I say, but a lot of self-discipline, and the importance of music with regards to developing a discipline.
Dr. Black was in the 73-74 band that did the Giannini Symphony No. 3 for band. Receiving another superior on such a difficult grade 6 work, Norman began submitting audition tapes to conference selection committees. The 1974 annual provided detailed coverage of the band, with a photo and individual names included for every section. These young people, under Mr. Woodall's guidance, were gaining wide attention for their excellent performances. It's impossible to mention all the excellent students, but there were several that Norman mentioned 10 years later to me as very special students in his memory. They included Pam Lewis and Betsy Cochran on flute. Sherby Jared still plays locally and has taught private lessons to many later Central flute students. In the percussion, we see Mark Tumblin, grandson of Fountain City historian Dr. J.C. Tumblin, and Joe Black is here as a sophomore. Jim Lotes was now a senior, and 2 children of Colbert Petrie, the drum major from the 1940s, are in the brass section, Mike Petrie on tuba and Ann Petrie on horn. Ed Mann was first chair clarinet, and another of the Black family, Jan, is on clarinet. Jan became a teacher.
And then my sister, of course, she was a freshman under Mr. Willis, Jan Dedrick. And she's now the assistant principal at Central.
And she taught there?
Yeah, she taught mathematics there, for a number of years.
Another student in the clarinet section was Cheryl Spar, who also now plays bass. She played frequently for the Al Curtis Orchestra while I was a member, and today works at a local music store. Horn player Bill Bommeljay's father was the horn instructor at UT and played in the KSO for years. Greg Roach was still in the trumpet section, and these 2 students are Brian McDonald and Billy Ruth. Both still live in Fountain City, and both have had sons who also played trumpet in the band. A final photo from what is believed to be 73 to 74 is this tribute to white boots and mile-wide collars, the color guard for the marching band. Yes, guard uniforms have also gone through many fads and fashions over the years. In 1974-1975, the hard work of the band under Mr. Woodall's direction came to a special peak. The band was selected to play for the annual conference of the Tennessee Music Educators Association in Nashville. Additionally, the same year, the band was chosen by audition to perform in New Orleans for the Southern Division meeting of the Music Educators National Conference. Joe Black remembers that the students realized what a true honor this was.
It was, and that was 75 was my junior year, and we had an incredible senior class. where we had strong members in each section. Everyone was excited about doing it, just because we knew what was kind of at stake and the opportunities that we had.
The demanding program included the gallant 7th March. Joe Black is the snare drummer. The conference performances also included a Rossini overture, The Silken Ladder, which featured the woodwinds, especially the clarinets led by Ed Mann, who did the 2 clarinet cadenzas in the piece. These excerpts are all from the TMEA performance that year in Nashville. A recording of the New Orleans performance was not available for this project.
There was a New Orleans recording made. The reason I know that is that I was the timpanist, and so I had a rickety old stand, and then during one of the cadenzas, all my timpani mallets rolled across all the drums. And so that's on the tape. I was sitting behind the timpani, you know, since it was a cadenza, all the drums had been tuned, and I was just waiting for that to be over. And then things started happening, and so I know that recording exists because I felt about that big, you know, during the rest of that performance. Matter of fact, he did not say a word after it. And he did not even mention it to me because he knew how I felt about it.
The program also included the Spanish Fantasia Jealousy. Another piece was the fun, whimsical Variations on America by Charles Ives. The trumpet soloist here was Brian McDonald. And the band did all the movements of the famous Lincolnshire Posy by Percy Grainger. This tour de force for band is based on British folk songs, and the band also did it for the ETSBOA Concert Festival that year for a superior rating. Norman had done part of the work for Festival while at Hickson High School, but no other director had ever attempted it until the 2005 Central Band. The trumpets again included Brian McDonald and Bill Ruth. Brian would later marry Mary McBee, a chorus student of Charles Sanders. Mary McDonald is now an editor, publisher, and composer of religious music with hundreds of published works. Their son Chris also was an all-state trumpet player for us in recent years and was one of our drum majors during his senior year in fall 2004. Here's that excellent clarinet section, including Ed Mann and Mark Biaggi. The woodwinds also featured bassoonist Randy Russell and oboists Amy Ray and Kathy Underwood. In 1975-1976, Mr. Woodall took a very large group of 123 students to Festival in grade 6, receiving a superior on Italian and Algiers. Joe Black was now a senior, and he performed a percussion concerto with band accompaniment on the spring concert. Like his father, Joe Black became a pediatrician, and he and his wife Monica, also a pediatrician, joined the family practice.
I think it begins with the tradition. just knowing about Central's past. Just overall discipline of music has been so important to me and my family. That's helped me throughout school, throughout college, medical school, residency, my practice. Is that it's a discipline. The ones who are in the band, you know, they'd always ask, what are your favorite memories? Band. That's number one always. They may have a hard time explaining it, but they said that it was just such an incredible experience.
Joe even met his wife as a result of being a musician. In college, he played for a performance by his sister's sorority at UT.
And then after the performance, we had to be whisked off the stage. And so here I am with my drum set, everyone is leaving, and we have to be off the stage in 30 seconds or so. And without my even saying a word, she picked up my ride cymbal and carried it off the stage. And that was love at first sight.
Dr. Black had to put aside his drums, but told me that when his oldest daughter, Laurel, started band as a sixth grader at Gresham in the late 90s, he began playing again. We'll hear more about the next generation of the Black family later. Although marching band had always been important to the program, the band's reputation beyond the local area was largely based on concert performance. However, the band did participate in the marching contests held in Bristol during the Odell Willis era and in the contests at UT during the 1970s. The band did consistently well at the UT Marching Festival, earning first place in the fall 1976 event. For Concert Festival in spring 1977, Mr. Woodall set a demanding goal. Assistant Director Charles Torian took the second band to festival in grade 5, although for comment only rather than for a rating. Mr. Woodall took the 69-member first band in grade 6 on 4 Scottish dances. He also prepared an additional program with Suite of Old American Dances played by a 52-member wind ensemble drawn from the first band. Amazingly, both of the grade 6 groups got straight ones in a 1 in sight reading, an unheard of accomplishment that even Odell Willis never attempted. These photos for 1977-78 show drum major Wesley Dean, who would later become Mr. Woodall's physician, and the band officers. There are many outstanding students here, including trombonist Scott Tarver. His 2 sons have also been in the band on trombone and tuba. For this photo from the 1978 annual, Mr. Woodall had the band spell out CHS. This is remarkably similar to the 1964 annual photograph, although it's not known if the intent was to imitate that earlier idea. This band received a 2 rating on Carmina Burana. The 1978-79 officers included another of Colbert Petrie's daughters, Patty, and the drum major was Teresa Thompson. Teresa's older brother Kevin had been the drum major 2 years earlier, and their mother was a long-time secretary at Fountain City Elementary School. They posed for these photographs and framed them for Mr. Woodall, who displayed them in the band room for many years. After the 2 rating at festival in 1978, Norman began a practice of taking a smaller top band in grade 6 and taking the entire band in grade 5. Both groups earned a superior rating in spring 1979. The top group on Variants on a Medieval Tune, and the full band on Folk Song Suite. The grade 5 group was conducted by new assistant director Jack Mallard. This photo from fall 1979 shows Mr. Woodall and Mr. Mallard posing with the majorettes at a football game. Mr. Mallard wanted to wear these red and black outfits, and Mr. Woodall went along with the plan. It was not exactly Norman style, however, and they did not continue this look for very long. That spring of 1980, the top band earned a superior for Feast Day in Seville, and Mr. Mallard and the full band were awarded a superior in grade 5 on Variations on a Korean Folk Song. Throughout the 70s, the feeder program experienced a number of band directors. There were usually 3 directors covering all the classes at the 7 total schools from grades 4 through 12. Mr. Woodall taught the high school and some elementaries. The Gresham director also did 1 elementary, and the 3rd director did elementaries and assisted at Central. After Dwight Christian left Gresham in 1974 to return to high school teaching, Bob Oakes, Steve Haley, Richard Rogers, and Jack Mallard led the Gresham program at various times until I came in fall 1982. Years when there was an assistant at Central during band class, Mr. Woodall was able to divide the group into a top band and a second band. As the 1970s drew to a close, here are the band officers for 1979-1980. This is percussionist Mark Honeycutt. I played a few jobs in the 80s with Mark. He was an excellent drummer. Singer Lee Greenwood evidently agrees. Mark has served for 10 years as Mr. Greenwood's drummer for all his tours and stage shows. Mark told me that he credits Norman Woodall starting him as a beginner with providing the inspiration to be a professional musician today. As he puts it, Mr. Woodall set a standard of excellence and accepted nothing less. Only after years of reflection do I fully understand the impact of music education, and Mr. Woodall in particular, in my life. It was an honor to be a part of the great tradition of the Central Band.